Our guest today is Dr. Jorge Vazquez, who wears multiple hats. We'll have to figure out which one he's wearing today. He is an oceanographer, climate scientist at JPL, but that's not why he's here. He is a member of our Rotary E-Club of the Greater San Fernando Valley, so he's not really a guest, but that's not really why he's here. His hat today is more of a sombrero. He is here to discuss with us his longtime support of Estado 29 Orphanage. So welcome to your own team, Jorge.
Thank you, Mel, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this and talk about something so close to my heart.
Well, let's get to the absolute basics. What is Estado 29?
Estado 29 is an orphanage that is about 10 miles inland from Ensenada. It's in a little town called San Antonio de las Minas. So if you drive in, going to Ensenada, and you turn left on a road called Tecate, and you drive about 10 miles, and you get to San Antonio de las Minas, the orphanage is on your right-hand side. It's made up of about 4 buildings, I would say, dormitories for the girls, dormitories for the guys, a dining room hall, and also a house for the director itself. There's also staff that take care of the children. There's a full-time kitchen director, then there's also a full-time director of the orphanage itself. And right now, it supports about 60 children. The orphanage is a private orphanage, so it is religiously affiliated, and it gets no support except for some food staples from the government.
Nothing at all. Everything has to be provided privately.
Yes.
How do these children come to be at the orphanage?
Actually, and that's a great question. They come from a lot of different parts and under a lot of different circumstances. Mexico is a little different than the United States in that it doesn't have foster care system. So the system is based on orphanages. A lot of these kids come from abusive families. Some of them come from families that financially can't take care of the children. But a lot of them do have parents. Just for whatever circumstances, parents are not in a position to take care of the kids. So they end up in the orphanage. Some of them, actually last year when we were there over Christmas, for example, there was a brother and sister that had just been found on the streets of Ensenada Christmas Eve. Basically, I think it was like around 11 o'clock or 12 midnight, and they were just brought in. This was on Christmas Eve. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor for, there are a lot of different circumstances for why the children end up at the orphanage.
What's the age range of the children who are there now?
I would say it's probably about from 3 to 4 to, I would say, 16 or 17, but in terms of the distribution, most of them are right now on the younger end of things. It has changed over the years. Now they're focusing more on younger kids. Previously we had a lot more teenagers, but now the focus is a lot more on younger children. Plus, there seems to be a tendency now that the need is there. They're finding more and more young kids that really need help.
Is there ever a chance of the parents returning to their families?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mel. Yes, there are circumstances when after whatever happens that the children do return to the parents, but also that's a difficult situation because one of the reasons that, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but one of the reasons that I have been drawn to this place is it does become a family. So sometimes it's difficult because these kids become literally brothers and sisters.
And the orphanage is more of a family setting than
exactly,
their family was.
Exactly. So they're very, very careful about when those kind of things happen in terms of, is it the right thing for them to return to the family? Is it the right timing? And then how to do that correctly.
Is there any governmental or judicial oversight of the parents where, as in the United States, a court could determine that these particular parents are not the best place for the child to be?
I don't know the details of the court system in Mexico. That's a great question. But I do know that obviously the kids are brought in as I mentioned, and unfortunate circumstances from abusive families. And I'll just mention quickly one case that we had, because it's so close to my heart, where a young girl was actually burned intentionally in a fit of rage by her mom. Well, we had a wonderful experience where we were able to get that young girl treated at Shriners Hospital in Los Angeles. And now she's a 18 or 19-year-old adult, and when we go back there, she comes and visits us just to say hello. But those are the kind of circumstances that we've had over the years, and that was a wonderful, experience in being able to work with a hospital based in Los Angeles to treat a child at the orphanage, and that wasn't the only time that's happened.
No, we know from our club's recent experience, because of the generosity of the San Fernando Valley Japanese Language Institute, which gathered school supplies to donate to the orphanage, the rare occasion where one of our community partners is helping us with one of our unrelated projects. So clearly, there is schooling going on down there.
Yes.
What is the school situation, the education situation at the orphanage?
Well, basically, it is a public school system, in Mexico, and the kids go to a public school. But again, and this is one thing I want to make very clearly, is that doesn't mean there's no need in supporting education. The kids still need to get uniforms to go to school, so there's always that need also. The kids always need school supplies, and thank you to the Japanese Valley Language Institute, because they provided that opportunity in school supplies for the children. So again, yes, the schools are public, but that doesn't mean the need isn't there. And one of the other things close to my heart is that as these kids get older, and I've met some that are very, very bright, should have the opportunity to go ahead and go to the university or college. And that's a huge gap right now, because for that, you do need to get funds. So one of the things they're looking at seriously now is the possibility of supporting, a child, particularly, good student that definitely could benefit from going on to higher education.
A college scholarship fund,
Exactly.
for example.
Exactly.
So they're not being schooled on site at the orphanage. They are, as with all the kids, wherever they live, they are getting up in the morning and going off to a public school nearby.
Yes, most of them, and there are two actually excellent universities.
Okay.
Public universities, the University of Ensenada and the University of Baja California, and they're both within probably 10 miles of the orphanage, obviously very close to Ensenada, and by the way, in beautiful locations right along the ocean. So
Please don't tell me they're football rivals.
no.
Just checking. So this, at what point does a child age out of the orphanage, and then what?
Well, and that's always an issue. That is something that has always been, in a sense, a major issue in how we handle, the support for the orphanage. Because yes, the policy has been that once these kids turn 18 years old, they have two choices. They can't stay at the orphanage, but then they have to work at the orphanage supporting, the other kids, or they have to get work outside. But at that point, they can no longer just stay at the orphanage. And there are, for example, there's one child there that we've known probably for 13 years since we've been supporting the orphanage, that is now, working and also going to one of the local universities, as I mentioned. So that makes me very happy. But those are the kind of situations that arise, yes. But they do have a policy with respect to that. And, they too also try to support the kids in making the next step in their life.
All of these kids are fairly local?
Yes. And the support, though, has been very broad-based. The orphanage over the years has also had support from churches, 1,000, 2,000 miles away. But one thing I just want to add is that has changed over the years, because basically two things: the economic situation, and also obviously the political situation in Mexico. So, in a sense, what they relied on, a lot of the private donations that they relied on in the past are no longer there. So that's also a situation that, we'll have to look at very carefully in terms of how to move things into the future for the kids.
And there's no government funding. The only thing
There's no government funding. The government basically does provide some food staples like rice and beans, but beyond that, no.
Yeah. Access to the schools.
No.
Well, access to the public education, the public schools for education. Right. There's no tuition that the kid has to pay to go to the public school.
Exactly. Kids still have to pay tuition. They still have to come up with tuition. So
Right.
that's still an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
So
a little
that's why what I would like to be able to see is, in fact, a situation where we can get actually sponsors for one child that maybe, again, wants to go to a higher education. And one of the things I would love to see that we're working on is trying to make a connection with service clubs and Rotary clubs in Ensenada, which would, I think, facilitate that greatly to be able to do something like that.
That leads us into the bigger level of support at least within Rotary. How did you come to connection with this orphanage?
Yeah, there's a history there. I basically joined Rotary, and I can't even remember when I joined Rotary now. It's been a long time ago. And I was looking for something that was close to my heart. And obviously I have a passion for youth and I have a passion for international. So I had the opportunity to go to the orphanage in Mexico. And that was about now almost 15 years ago. And immediately, I felt this was a calling for me, and I've since then I've been going regularly along with Rotary clubs to support the orphanage. It's been over 15, and we've seen some amazing things happen. The other story I want to quickly share, there was a girl whose life was in danger because she had a heart murmur that was detected. And we were able actually to connect through Healing the Children and through Rotary. We were able to get her treated at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. And now she's, I think, 22 years old and a healthy young girl, healthy young woman. So those are the kind of stories that, you do see happen down there, and it's just amazing.
You tend to go there every few weeks, at least once a quarter, as often as you can. What is a typical visit? Let's never mind the drive and the border crossing. Once you get there, what's a typical visit for you?
Well, we've been focusing now on two things: supplying the orphanage with food and restocking their food supplies and cleaning supplies. So we usually will go into Ensenada, maybe the local Smart and Final, and other stores, and do some shopping for the orphans. We have also been focusing, one thing that kids love, it's something we take for granted, but they don't have the opportunity to see movies together. So we turn the dining room hall into a movie theater in the evening and project movies and make popcorn for them. So those are the kind of two things we've been focusing on. But there are also some long-term vision plans that we have. And part of that, again, is I'm passionate about education, and I know other people are, so I really would like to see something supporting that process, especially for students and some of the kids that could really benefit from going on to higher education. And then we're also looking, for example, there was the last trip that we went on was right after a El Nino type of storm. So there was a lot of water damage. They had pillars that holding up the roofs at different locations. So we focused on basically also finding some funding to try to patch the roofs and also bring down, blankets and things like that and space heaters so the kids could have at least a dry and warm place to sleep at night. So sometimes the needs also come in at unexpected ways, and this was very unexpected. They had a major flooding event because of a huge rainstorm.
So the infrastructure is somewhat dependent on that as well. It's something we've talked about privately. Might as well bring up and mention. It strikes me that they seem to be in an area that I equate in my head with getting a lot of sunshine.
Yeah.
obviously it can't be easy to, how reliable and how costly is the electricity in that area?
Well, and that's a great point, Mel. Thanks for asking, because this goes into the issue of long-term plans. And one of the things that I would like to see us do in terms of Rotary is, for example, we've already done some costs of what it would cost to put in a solar, solar energy. Right now, they're paying about $1,000 a month for electricity. Can you imagine if you put in solar panels and they wouldn't have to pay $1,000 a month, how much that would go toward education and feeding the kids? It would just make an incredible difference. So those are some of the long-term plans. And the thing that's nice is they do have a lot of land. So you could basically put in a ground system. You wouldn't have to rely on putting in an entire new roof to put in the solar panels. So those are kind of looking at long-term plans, way down the road. But I think that would make a huge, huge impact, in terms of electricity down there. The other issue is water. I'll just bring that up quickly. It used to be, yes, we're dealing with a drought in Southern California. Well, this is only 3.5 hours south of us. They're dealing with a drought in Mexico also. So before they could get water from a well. Now the water table is so low because of the drought, they have to ship that in from Ensenada. So that's added another expense that they didn't have, let's say, 10 years ago.
So it's a rolling
Yes.
situation of what the need might
Absolutely.
be next.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're still slightly blaming you for not having as much El Nino rain as we'd like to help with the drought, but by then we're not getting as much flooding, so then you're
Yeah,
off
exactly.
Yeah.
So
This is your problem with education. We used to blame weather people for things like El Nino, but now we know it's the ocean's fault, so it becomes the oceanographer's fault.
Well, and I'll just add to that, again, no matter in terms of the orphanage, no matter what happens this year, unless they get a lot more rain than usual, they're still not going to be able to rely, on getting water from a well. It's not going to change that. It's not going to raise the water table to where it was 10 or 15 years ago. They're not going to get that, that resolved overnight. So that situation is going to remain no matter what happens in terms of rain this year.
So finding other costs to save
Exactly.
will make room for the ones that cannot be changed.
Exactly.
Now, a thought was working in my head that you were saying they have a lot of land near them, and it occurred to me to suggest something along the lines of, could they put in and teach the kids how to cultivate a garden? And now I'm immediately withdrawing that from my head because there's no water.
That's a great question, Mel. We looked at that, we were thinking, well, and that's the issue, you hit it right on. We were thinking, well, why don't they use this land to put in vegetables and fruits and other things? The problem, again, is the water. They would have to pay for that, and that's expensive. So, yes, absolutely. That's that you hit the nail on the head.
The savings of having food you don't have to buy would be eaten, for
Exactly.
want of a better word, by the lack of water.
And just a little bit of historical context I forgot to mention. The orphanage, the land there was actually owned by the father of the current director. He was a pastor who he owned all of this land, and his vision, his dream was to turn it into an orphanage. So his daughter, basically that's what she did. She used the land to build an orphanage. So that gives you a little bit of a historical context and how the orphanage came into being.
How long has it existed?
I think the orphanage itself, I think it has been about 20 years. When we first started going there, they basically didn't even really have indoor plumbing. So a lot of the infrastructure that's been built up over the years, which has been great, but the problem now is just like any other infrastructure, you need money to maintain it. That money has been dried up. So, no pun intended.
Right.
That money has been dried up. So now the problem becomes, how do you maintain this great infrastructure that was originally built?
And get to it fast enough so that it doesn't get worse and become even more expensive.
Exactly.
Now, the director occupies one of the buildings there. She lives there.
Yes.
That's full-time. That's
Yes.
the daughter of the founder.
Yeah.
So there's how many people are there on staff? Pretty much full. No one else lives there except her and the kids. Are there counselors or other helpers who are there
Yes,
overnight, 24/7?
absolutely. The director is there. There's a director of the kitchen. She lives there and also helps out with the kids. There's another individual also that helps out with the kids. And one thing you've seen in a transition over the years, and I think this is also because of the money issue, now you see a lot of the older kids taking responsibility for the younger kids, which is a beautiful thing. And again, I think we're not privy to all the details, but I think one of the reasons for that, again, is they don't have the money to pay the staff they had 10 or 15 years ago. So now they basically have a full-time kitchen director, a full-time director, and I think one other person also on staff, basically to meet the needs and take care of the needs of the kids.
And otherwise, it's the older kids helping the younger kids.
Exactly.
You're describing, as you said earlier, a family.
Exactly. They do become really a family, and that's one of the things that I think has touched me. I mean, every time now you go down there, you get 50 kids coming up to you and giving you hugs within a matter of 5 minutes. So this is the kind of atmosphere that you have down there. It's just, there's a lot of love, and the kids love each other, and they love it when we come down there also.
Now, moving to the future, obviously, in any situation, there's always going to be a need for money. That's the way it works. But what objects, what items, what things do they need that could be extras gathered and brought down there, for example?
I think right now the basic needs, and again, it's been great with the Rotary clubs already, and the E-Club is donating, for example, towels. We found out the last time they had like 2 towels for like 50 kids or something like that. So that's been wonderful. The other, obviously, there was an immediate need with money to patch the roof. Blankets, I think and space heaters, which I think we're working on, and we've already had donated through people also in the E-Club. And, that's, when we go down there, we were basically sleeping with the kids in 30 or 40 degree nights. You can imagine what that's like. I mean, you can tolerate it when you go down to one night, but you can imagine children having to wake up in that every morning and having to take showers. So it's hard. I mean, now fortunately I think the weather changes, but they do have very cold nights down there. So I think, it's always replacing things like blankets and stuff like that is always a need that they have. And as I mentioned, the other long-term goals are, I think, again, doing something like maybe a Rotary project through matching grants or something to put in a solar facility down there. Solar panels, I think, would be incredible. A lot of these needs, like I said, happen, come up almost as one is down there and you see them. Another big need down there is obviously the infrastructure. That's huge down there. They really they're going to need a new roof at some point. Patching, not going to get away with that, forever. And a lot of the windows need to be replaced now. I have a big concern because a lot of the stairs now going up to some of the dormitories on a second floor are getting cracking, and I just, fear that some kid is going to slip on that and something's going to happen. So that's also a huge need, to be able to go down there and somebody look at the infrastructure and say, yeah, we can fix this and this and this. So those are I think are the big issues. Right. For the orphanage right now.
So it's what individual items like towels and blankets they could use immediately, and then it's where to find the expertise to get down there to size up what needs to do to fix the infrastructure.
Exactly.
It sounds like the only issue that's not solvable in any way other than money is the water.
Yeah, I mean exactly. I mean, I think, like I said, even if we happen to get a lot of rain this year, that's not going to go away. The water situation is going to remain critical in Ensenada, and not only in Ensenada, but also obviously in San Antonio de las Minas, where the orphanage is. And to give you an example, one of the women that work there, when we were there the last time, talked about the rainstorm, and she hasn't had water in her house in Ensenada for, I think it was like 10 days. So it was having to be brought in. So yes, the water situation is also very, very serious, at times, and it's very costly also.
So for our club and our visitors to the program, locals looking on occasion, and we can put lists up somewhere for items that could perhaps be brought down there on a next visit. If anyone wants to make this visit with you in the near future on one of your upcoming trips and really experiencing it, Richard Cortez in our club has spoken of his visits there, and he got the club members very interested in going. You should hire him as your press agent, in fact. And beyond that, it sounds like the best idea is to brainstorm what we can do to get expertise and perhaps funds leading maybe towards this grant project, making connections with the Rotary clubs in the immediate Ensenada area. There are 4.
Absolutely. And I think, and unfortunately, I think it was Linda also sent me already some contact information from the Ensenada clubs that, I need to follow up on. We tried the last time we were there, but we went to the local places where the clubs met, but we didn't have any success. But I think that would be a major breakthrough, because then we would have the Rotary clubs in Ensenada also helping us with some, eyes on the ground, so to speak, right there, that can do a lot more than we can 3.5 hours away. But yeah, if anybody wants to come, you always have an invitation. If it's just, like I said, it's an amazing experience to, nowadays we don't even have to get out of the van. When we get there, the children invade the van and start giving us hugs even before we can make it out. So that shows you the kind of atmosphere, that these kids basically create. It's just wonderful children.
Good experience to work for.
Yeah.
Well, Jorge Vazquez, member of our club, teammate, thank you for taking the time to teach us about this, and we'll all keep thinking about what we can do.
Thank you, Mel, for the opportunity to do this. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.